The same descending blur, the same veil-like shape, but the staircase was unmistakably American. Plain wooden banisters, narrow steps, the kind of architecture you'd find in an old colonial home, not an English manor. The figure was halfway down, and even though the image was still, I had the overwhelming impression of motion, as if she were continuing her descent beyond the frozen frame. My breath caught. Beneath the photograph were the letters, only a few pages. Copied carefully, I read them slowly, each line tightening something inside my chest. We do not speak of her aloud. She comes closer when named. The stairs are never empty now, even when they are. She is patient. She is endless. The last letter was the worst. It was short, written in hurried strokes as if time had run out. If you have found this, then she has already crossed with you. Do you think distance will save you? The veil is carried, not buried. I sat back hard in my chair. Carried, not buried. The words echoed in my skull. I looked again at the photograph, at the blurred shape descending. My mind insisted it was just a trick of exposure, a smudge of light, but my body didn't believe that. My skin prickled, my throat tightened. The room felt too still. Then, somewhere in the building, a door closed. A soft sound, followed by something else, a faint creak. Wood under pressure. My eyes lifted toward my apartment door, then toward the hallway beyond it, where the stairwell waited. The creak came, slow, measured, like someone placing a foot carefully on a step. I held my breath. The television droned meaningless words in the background, but the sound seemed far away, muffled by the sudden awareness sharpening in the air. Another creak, closer. My pulse hammered. I told myself it was a neighbor, someone going down to the lobby, ordinary life, but the rhythm was wrong, too patient, too deliberate. And then, threading through the air so faintly I almost missed it, came the whisper of fabric. Not footsteps alone, fabric brushing stone. My eyes flicked back to the photograph. The brown lady was still halfway down the stairs, descending, always descending. I don't know why I stood up. I don't know why I moved toward my own hallway, toward the door that led to the building's stairwell. Curiosity is not the right word. It felt more like inevitability, like the story itself had tugged on a string tied around my ribs. I opened my apartment door. The hallway outside was dim, lit by only flickering one bulb. The stairwell door stood at the far end, closed, silent. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a creak from behind that door, as if someone inside had shifted their weight on the steps. My mouth went dry. I stared at the stairwell door, unable to move, and in my mind, uninvited, a certainty formed with chilling clarity. The photograph wasn't a record. It was a window, and by bringing it here, I had invited her to continue her descent. I should have closed the door. That was the simplest thing, the most human thing. To shut out the hallway, lock myself back inside my apartment and pretend I hadn't heard anything at all. But I stood there with my hand on the frame, staring down the corridor toward the stairwell door, as if the building itself had become a question I was obligated to answer. The flickering bulb overhead buzzed faintly, its light stuttering in uneven pulses that made the shadows seem to shift when they shouldn't. Every instinct told me to step back, yet the silence beyond the stairwell door felt too deliberate, like something holding perfectly still because it knew I was listening. Another creak sound, soft, controlled, not the careless noise of a neighbor rushing down steps. This was slow, patient, as if whoever or whatever was inside had all the time in the world. I swallowed hard and forced my feet forward. The hallway carpet muted my steps, making me feel unreal, like I was moving through someone else's dream. With each pace, the air grew heavier, thick with the scent of dust and something faintly floral beneath it, a perfume that did not belong in a modern apartment building. My throat tightened. The stairwell door loomed closer, painted the same dull gray as every other utility door, ordinary in every way except for the way it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. I stopped inches away. The metal handle was cold. I hesitated, listening. Nothing. No footsteps, no breathing, just silence, dense, invading. Then, so faint it was almost imagined, the whisper of fabric brushed against stone from the other side. My heart lurched. I stepped back involuntarily, a quiet sound escaping my throat. For a moment, I considered turning, walking away, pretending this was nothing more than an overheated mind feeding on folklore. But the thought of the photograph sitting on my table behind me felt like a weight. A window left open, an invitation unanswered. I reached out. My fingers closed around the handle. The metal seemed to vibrate faintly, though that was impossible. I pulled. The door opened with a low groan, revealing the stairwell beyond. Concrete steps descended into shadow. The air inside cooler than the hallway, damp with the smell of old cement. A single bulb hung halfway down its light, weak and yellow, barely touching the corners. For several seconds I saw nothing. Empty steps, still air, no figure in brown. Relief flicked through me so sharply it almost made me dizzy. And then I noticed something wrong. The bulb halfway down wasn't flickering like the one in the hall. It was steady, too steady, as if the stairwell had its own separate atmosphere, untouched by the normal flaws of electricity. The light pulled on the steps like a stage spotlight, illuminating the exact center of the staircase and leaving everything else in darkness. My gaze fixed there, on the middle steps, where faint marks disturbed the dust. Footprints, not muddy, not wet, just impressions as if something had pressed down gently, repeatedly, over time. The shape was indistinct, but the pattern was unmistakable, steps taken slowly downward. I felt my skin go cold. I leaned closer, peering into the gloom, and that was when the air shifted. Not a breeze, not wind, a presence moving past the edge of perception. The scent of perfume strengthened suddenly, blooming in the stairwell like a memory forced into the present. Lavender and something older, something antique, clinging to the damp air. My breath caught. I took one step inside. The door swung slightly behind me, not closing, just moving with a soft scrape. The sound echoed strangely, stretched out in the concrete chamber. I stood still, listening so hard my ears ached. Then a creak above me, not below, above. My blood turned to ice, slowly, impossibly. I lifted my eyes toward the upper landing. The stairwell continued upwards past my floor, disappearing into darkness, and for a moment the space was empty. Then the light changed, not brighter, not dimmer, just altered, as if something had passed between the bulb and the air. A faint blur appeared at the top of the stairs, so subtle I almost convinced myself it was a shadow, but it moved, not quickly, descending. The shape was wrong, indistinct, like fabric in fog stitched together, draped in the suggestion of brown. No face, no clear features, just the outline of a woman and the unbearable sense of sorrow radiating from her like cold. She was coming down, step by step, soundless. My legs locked, my mouth opened, but no words came out. The figure continued, unhurried, as if she had been descending these stairs for a century and would descend for a century more. The air around her shimmered faintly, the way heat does above pavement, except this was cold, a distortion of reality itself. And the strangest part, the part that hollowed me out completely, was that she didn't look at me. She wasn't hunting, she wasn't raging, she was simply repeating a loop of grief, emotion trapped in time. She reached the middle steps directly beneath the steady bulb, and for the first time her form sharpened slightly. The folds of her gown looked heavy, old-fashioned. The veil obscured her head and shoulders, making her seem both present and unreachable. The perfume was overwhelming now, filling my lungs with the past. I couldn't move. Then she descended one more step, and the air around me tightened like a room holding its breath. For the briefest instant, I felt something brush against my mind, not words, not a voice, but an emotion so deep it wasn't mine. Loss, endless loss, and beneath it, a single chilling certainty. She was not bound to Raynham Hall. She was bound to stairs, to thresholds, to being seen. And now that I had opened the door, I was part of her descent. The bulb above flickered once, the figure wavered, and then, as if the world blinked, she was gone. The stairwell was empty again. Only the scent remained, only the footprints in dust, only the silence heavier than before. I stood frozen, staring at the steps where she had been, my heart hammering so violently it hurt. And somewhere far below, deep in the building's lower levels, I heard the faintest creak, as if the descent had not ended, only moved farther down. I didn't remember leaving the stairwell. One moment I was standing under that sticky bulb, lungs full of perfume and cold, staring at steps that had held something impossible, and the next, I was back inside my apartment with the door shut, the lock turned, my hands trembling as if they belonged to someone else. The photograph lay on the table where I'd left it, innocent and flat, as if it hadn't just opened the seam in reality. The television was still murmuring in the background, some meaningless program continuing as though the world had not shifted on its axis. For a long time, I stood with my back against the wall, listening. No footsteps in the hall, no creak of stairs, no whisper of fabric, only the thud of my own heartbeat, too loud, too human. I told myself it was stress, exhaustion, a mind too full of stories. That was the only explanation that fit inside the boundaries of sanity. But the scent of lavender lingered faintly in the air, threading through my apartment like a thin veil, and that detail refused to be rationalized away. Smells don't hallucinate easily. They cling, they persist. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her descending again, the motion endless and patient. I began to understand something about hauntings that people never mention. It isn't the fear that destroys you first, it's the repetition. The way the mind replays the moment over and over, trying to find the place where it could have gone differently, trying to solve an equation that has no solution. There at 3 in the morning, I finally did what I should have done hours earlier. I called my friend. He answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep and immediate concern. "You saw something," he said, not asking. I hesitated, then whispered. I opened the stairwell door. There was a pause, long enough for me to hear his breathing. "Don't keep it," he said quietly. "The photograph. Don't keep it in your home." "I didn't think it was real," I murmured. "None of us do," he replied. "Not until it's too late." Too late. The words settled into me like lead. The next day, sunlight poured through my windows in bright, ordinary sheets. The world looked harmless again, and that made the memory of the night before feel even more unreal, like something my brain had invented. I almost convinced myself it had been a dream. Then I stepped into the hallway. The bulb above the stairwell door was no longer flickering. It was steady, perfectly steady. A small detail, a meaningless detail, except it hadn't been like that before. I stared at it for a long time, unease tightening in my chest. I didn't open the stairwell again. I didn't even approach it. I took the elevator down, avoiding the steps as if they were a mouth waiting to swallow me. At work, I tried to focus, but the day moved strangely, like time had thickened. Every staircase I passed felt wrong, every descending motion, a co-worker going down steps, an escalator carrying people into a subway station, made my stomach twist. It wasn't just our image anymore, it was the concept of descent itself, as if the world had become full of echoes of that one endless motion. By late afternoon, I made a decision. I would get rid of it, not throw it away. Something about that felt reckless, like discarding a lit match into dry grass. I would return it to the collector, or to my friend, or to anyone else who could lock it back into whatever dark corner it belonged in. I told myself that removing it from my apartment would close the door I'd opened. But when I returned home, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Lavender, stronger than before. My pulse spiked. I stepped inside slowly, the air cool against my skin. The apartment looked normal, nothing out of place, no sign of intrusion. And yet the scent was undeniable, blooming through the rooms like a presence. My eyes went immediately to the table. The photograph was still there, but it was not where I had left it. I froze. It had shifted, only slightly, as if someone had nudged it. The corner now angled toward the hallway, toward the apartment door, like an arrow. My throat went dry. I approached cautiously, every nerve screaming. I hadn't touched it. No one else had been inside. I stared at the image, at the blurred figure descending the staircase, and for the first time something new registered, something I hadn't noticed before. In the lower portion of the photograph, near the bottom steps, there was a darkness, not shadow, not grain, a shade, as if someone else stood waiting below. My breath caught. The brown lady was descending as always, but now she was not alone. A cold wave rolled through me, and the apartment suddenly felt too small. The walls too close. I looked toward the hallway outside my door, imagining the stairwell beyond it, imagining those concrete steps stretching downward into darkness. The descent wasn't finished, it was continuing, and whatever waited at the bottom was beginning to reveal itself. That night, I didn't turn on the television. I didn't pretend normality. I sat in silence with the photograph sealed inside a drawer, as if wood could contain what paper had invited. But deep in the building, sometime after midnight, I heard it again. The slow creak of stairs, not rushing, not random. Measured, patient, descending. And then, faint as breath, the whisper of fabric brushing stone, as if the brown lady had found a new staircase, and she intended to keep going.